All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. I feel it's appropriate that one of the last presenters between us and socializing at the cocktail reception is an expert in social media, so maybe he can give us some tips and tricks on how to best deal with the cocktail reception later. I'd like to introduce Shane Gibson. Shane is one of the most trusted social media speakers today, drawing on his extensive sales background. He's an authority on social media that delivers measurable results with real-world knowledge. He's also the author of several books on social media, including Sociable, which all of you are getting to take home with you. So I'd like to welcome Shane Gibson.
So I have about 40 some odd minutes to dive into a topic that I spend pretty well 24 hours a day eating, drinking, and breathing so that you don't have to. So hopefully I can give you a very condensed format around how social media is really impacting the way we sell and the way we market. And this is really, in a lot of cases, a customer-driven situation where social and social networks are platforms on which our customers do everything from research the vehicles they're going to buy, to do a background check on us from a human resource perspective, to check out what our competitors are saying, to monitor their own competitors, to communicate and collaborate with their own teams. So these are the tools today that consumers and business people are utilizing to connect, collaborate, and do research. And for us as marketers, as sales organizations, as customer-centric organizations, I believe that it is really our responsibility to utilize these tools to connect and communicate in the way that our customers want to. Now, before I go any further, what I want to talk about is, in a lot of cases, what people ask you to do is turn off your cell phones, put away your computers, and pay attention. What I like to encourage you to do is, if you're on Twitter, as a bare minimum, these are the hashtags for this conversation. So SCRM is what I'm going to be talking about, social CRM. CDC Galaxy is the conference hashtag. And of course, I'm at Shane Gibson on Twitter. So feel free to tweet both positive and other type of feedback. Ask questions. I won't be able to answer them on the fly as I'm standing up here, but right after the session, if you have any questions or tweets, I'll definitely engage. And let us know what you think and share your thoughts on the session. So let's start off with today's consumer. This guy's name is Christian Gibson. This was a picture of him, I guess, a little over 2 years ago. He was 8 years old. Today he is now 11. But it was a convert, and this is really interesting because things have really shifted in the way we process information, what we think is credible in general as a society, but in particular the younger generation as well. So I look at Christian, and Christian and I were sitting watching TV one day, and it was a Sunday morning, and we're watching, the cartoons, and this great commercial came on TV. And it was these remote control cars sort of launching over logs and bricks and down little dirt roads, and animated explosions and a deep booming voice from Mattel telling you how great this product was. And I was like ready to hop off the couch. I was pretty excited. I thought we could buy a couple of these and have a lot of fun. So I looked over at Christian. I thought, pretty cool, huh? And he looked at me and he goes, Dad, I think those are going to break. And he's like, rolls his eyes, like, do you really believe TV? Like, are you kidding me? They're trying to market to us, Dad. If you want to know what's cool, you ask your friends, whether it's digitally or in person. And today's customer, today's consumer, whether it's a business consumer or whether it's a general consumer, we believe what our friends in our community says a lot more than we believe polished corporate messages that are well vetted and pushed out with the right timing in many cases. So today our customer owns our brand. And this is a hard one to get our head around. Our customer owns our brand. Another way of saying it is there are no more marketing gurus, there are only consumers. As we found in many cases with elections, there's also constituents and voters with megaphones. There are no more really marketing gurus. And those megaphones are Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Meetup, Facebook, blogs, you name it. These are all tools that all of us are equipped with to communicate with. And the great thing about it is it's free or nearly free. So it costs next to nothing to get started. But the downside, of course, that also means there's a lot of noise out there. For instance, Twitter produces 100 million updates per day, or 3 billion a month. Email does 30 billion a month, but remember, email has also been around for 25 plus years. So Twitter's been a functioning business tool per se, or commercial tool, for less than 3 years, really. So these tools are really out there, but there's a ton of noise. So the question is, and let's look at these numbers here quickly. Facebook, 600 million people on Facebook. I remember sitting in Santiago, Chile, speaking to a group of marketers in April of 2009, and I was talking about how fantastic it was that Facebook had rapidly grown from 150 million to 250 million people. And fast forward just literally a couple years later, I'm standing here and we're talking about 600 million. And the majority of that growth happened in the over 45-year-old age group and in the international markets. So when someone says that's just for teenagers from the US, well, actually, no. It's for most of us in the room and the international market. Okay, that's really the major growth that's happened in Facebook. LinkedIn is 100 million professionals representing every Fortune 500 company. Who here has got a LinkedIn profile? Who here in the last month has reached out and made a connection to someone that you didn't know and asked for an introduction to them? That's pretty good, actually. That's much higher than normal. Okay? Most of us have a LinkedIn profile. Most people's LinkedIn profile is a lot like my gym membership. People say, what's your charity? I go, the gym. I make monthly donations. It's for other people's health, but I don't actually go. And so LinkedIn is actually really, it is a tool that is an incredible business tool if you use it effectively. But anyways, there's 100 million people on that today. And I'm going to talk about a few of the new functionalities in LinkedIn that make it a real business intelligence tool as well. So Twitter, again, 100 million updates a day. Search.twitter.com is the second largest search engine on the planet. Okay, so there's only one search engine where there's more searches done daily, and that's Google. Okay, then third is, anybody want to guess? Bing, Yahoo, YouTube. YouTube's number 3. So 1 billion views per day. And so what we really talk about here is that 1 billion views a day at 600 million people on Facebook. It's not a question of whether or not our customers and our stakeholders are using these tools. It's a question of whether or not we can actually connect with them, find them, and have relevant conversations with them. That's really, really what it's about. It's connecting, finding, and having relevant conversations because our customers are utilizing these tools. So I think the important thing to look at, and this is something that I had to get. See, my background's sales performance. Before I got into social media, and I'm still very much involved in sales, is I've done a lot of sales training from South America to South Africa to Canada to the US, from all kinds of organizations, from the Fords of the world, right down to small to medium-sized enterprise. And so when I got into social media, the first thing I did was be a sales guy. And so I talked a lot about me. And I talked a lot about what we were doing. And I blogged a lot about, my blog posts look a lot like press releases. And then, I would kind of go out and monitor what people saying about my brand, and I heard crickets. There was no conversation. And there's a realization that social media is actually about listening. That effectiveness in the social web is 90% listening, monitoring, and community engagement, and 10% marketing and conversations around our brand. And that's where most organizations really miss it. So some of the tools we can use to monitor. Who's been onto search.twitter.com? Okay, so this is a powerful tool in many cases. Depending upon our business and the vertical we're in, it may or may not apply totally to your business. But search.twitter.com is a fantastic tool from a perspective, everything from just globally looking for trends, like for instance around CRM. Just searching for the hashtag SCRM shows me a list of everybody around the globe talking about that topic in the moment. All the latest trends, all the latest studies, all the best practices, all the questions, all the collaboration. It's all there instantly, tied together. Or I can do something as simple as I've noticed the only person who's tweeting about CDC Galaxy so far is me and the Bellagio. I don't know why the Bellagio's been tweeting about it, but they've actually been following I know what they've been doing. They've been following all the conversations immediately around their hotel and interacting with that. And so there is a local search capacity for businesses that have branch offices or location-based marketing and sales that can be used in Twitter that's very powerful from a search perspective. Google Alerts, I know this is sort of a redundant question probably, but who uses Google Alerts? Okay, so Google Alerts is an incredibly powerful tool. Google indexes every single website on the planet. And every time a new page is added, Google crawls that page, usually within minutes, if not just a day max. And if keywords, for instance, if I entered the word CDC Galaxy Conference, the term in quotations, let's say, every time there's a new mention of that on the web, Google would send me an email and a link to that page. I do the same thing with customer names. So I'll put your name plus your company name. And there's a couple instances, one particular instance where I saw this particular alert come in, and it was Vanita Peak, who was the Vice President of Certified Management Accountants and in marketing. And it said she got a national award for the marketing work they'd done. And so I picked up the phone and I called Vanita the next morning. I said, Vanita, congratulations. And she said, for what? I said, for your award. She said, what award? And I said, you know, the one that's posted on the Marketing Association website. And she goes, I haven't seen it yet. They haven't contacted us. And how did you know about it? I said, well, I'm kind of monitoring you. She goes, you're stalking me online? I go, yeah. She goes, you don't know where I live, do you? I go, no, it's nothing that's creepy. But Google is really good for that. Blog search, Google Blog Search is another tool, and what I like about it is you don't get the whole world, but just, for instance, you can dial it in so you only get blog posts from the last week about a certain topic emailed to you, for instance. Facebook search. Anybody ever use just facebook.com/search? Anybody been to that URL? So you can search everything from what your friends are saying to anything publicly available on Facebook. And some interesting, if you look in there, you'd be surprised how many different conversations are happening around specific industries, even just article sharing and who's interested. And then LinkedIn/Signal, who's been there? This is only like 6 weeks old. So LinkedIn/Signal will search your entire network. So, 1, 2, 3, 4 levels down, and let you know what the people in your network are talking about, enable you to dig in and connect with them from a topical basis. So these are some sort of beginning of social media monitoring tools. I could spend a whole afternoon going through about 40 of them, but these are some of the big ones. But what these enable you to do is today's consumer, business or otherwise, lives in a world of now. Everything's in the instant. And so the capacity to pick up on those conversations while they're happening and then engage and interact at that point is the true power of social. That's really the capacity to be completely relevant and have the great timing, or at least the most recent timing, if at all possible, with particular, whether it's a prospect, whether it's a client, whether it's a stakeholder or a competitor. So what I want to talk about here is the rules, not the rules of engagement, forgetting the rules of engagement, the levels of engagement people go through. I think this is important because the question is are my customers using these tools or these methods of communicating? And if so, where are they at? And where are we internally? One of the things we do at Socialize is we do a social media readiness assessment of an organization. And one of the reasons why is someone says, let's get social, let's get out there. My question is, is their corporate culture ready? Do they have the people in place? Do they have the best practices in place? Have they actually empowered and equipped the people that they're going to send out there and engage in the marketplace? And so one of the first things we look at is actually where are they at on this scale on average within the organization? And where do they need to go internally before they launch into the social web? So this, by the way, is in your book, and it's described in much more depth. But I'm going to roll through this quickly. The first level is the disengaged. And this level of social media engagement, kind of the best example is to pick on my father. Now, a little bit of a side note here. He has improved drastically since the story, but we've got an office in South Africa, which I used to travel to frequently, and now much less frequently. But we'd be dealing with clients and whatnot, and also have family stuff, and our main form of communication is email. So I would send Dad an email, and I'd even stay up till like midnight, so I knew it was office hours in South Africa, so I could send that email and get an immediate response, and it would still take at best an hour. It would take a long time, and I couldn't figure what was going on. And finally, I went into his office when I was in South Africa visiting, and what I found was something to my horror, was his secretary printing out his emails, taking them down the hallway and giving to them. And then he would read it, he would flip it over, and he would handwrite a response, and she would take it down the hallway and answer it. Now, this wasn't just an efficiency issue that bothered me. It was the fact that there was some stuff I sent him that really should have been between him and I only. And so I felt a little naked around the office, to say the least. And so my brother and I talked about this, and we rectified it by getting him a brand new HP laptop and setting him up and getting him poking away and getting used to the PowerPoints and getting used to Outlook, and he was doing fine. And then a few months later, almost a year later, I came back to South Africa, and he was rolling along and answering, and it was fantastic. And I came into his office, but there was a second desk in there. And there's this redheaded dude sitting there on his computer, but that was the one I got from my father. And I'm like, hey, who's this? He's like, that's Andre. And I go, what does Andre do around here? He goes, he operates the laptop. And I'm like, oh, no, right? So I'm thinking, now, he's on the web now. He's on Facebook. He's on Twitter. But kicking and screaming, but it was a 3-year process. So organizational change around leadership sometimes takes a little while. But anyway, so that's the disengaged. That's not someone who's going to be following your tweets. That's not someone you're going to monitor on LinkedIn. That's not someone who's going to hop on your blog unless you print it out and mail it to them. And so that's the disengaged quadrant. Now, they're still moving en masse, rapidly, into the social web and into the web in general because the barrier to entry is getting lower and lower every day. Then we move into the passively engaged. So this passively engaged individual is one where, yeah, Bill Gibson's sitting there, he's answering his emails. He'll go to CDC's main site because he's familiar with CDC offline. He'll go to CNN.com to get his news because it's a brand he trusts. He's not going to hop off into some obscure blog network to get information. He's not going to hop onto a Facebook group that someone started and interact to find product information. He's going to go often to traditional, tried and tested sources. He will watch a YouTube video if you email him it and send him a link, right? And this is one of the things I've had to train a number of my clients who I'd say are late adopters to even reading blogs or picking up any of the social web. And when I do a video or I do a blog post, I've got a list of people that I know will go and check it out. And I've got a list of people who I actually will spoon feed them the content. I'll say, hey, I've done a new post. You and your team may find this relevant. And over a period of time, you can train those customers to consume your social content. All of a sudden, you notice they're subscribed. You notice they're following. So that's the passively engaged group. That's a big, big part of the market. Then we go into the reactively engaged. So this individual is someone who, I call them the professional lurker. Okay, this is the person who's joined Facebook to stalk their children. Anybody familiar with that, right? A little bit. And so this person has a complete profile. They've got a LinkedIn profile. They're reading blogs. They're following Twitter feeds. They're subscribed to newsletters. But you won't hear a peep out of them. They bounce around. They consume a lot of content. When you meet with them, they know all about what you're doing. But they haven't done something as simple as made a Facebook comment, a LinkedIn like, or even made a blog comment or shared anything. So they tend to be very much super consumers. They're on the social web, but they're silent. And I find a number of my clients I've landed from large corporations would fall into that category, where the first type of interaction I've had with them was actually the phone ringing, because they've listened to a podcast or they've been following the blog or they've been following the Twitter stream. Then we move into the proactively engaged. And this particular individual, you met them at this conference, you went out to the bathroom, and on the way back, you look at your phone, and there's already a LinkedIn request, right? This is the totally proactive connector. He puts up some good content. They're the first person to like it, share it, cut and paste it, and move it around. If there's some type of charity drive online, they're the one that's driving it. They're very, very active in community building. They're very, very active in sharing content and supporting others. This is also, although this is one of the first steps in being effective, is building community and sharing and connecting, this is also one of the most frustrated marketers and sales professionals all meet on the social web. And the reason why is they'll come to me and say, man, I'm on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, we're blogging as a corporation, we're out there monitoring conversations, we're having conversations, and I'm really busy, but I'm not getting any results. And we're not getting the traction we thought we would get. And my answer is, you know what? That's because 99% of your activity is spent being a super fan and a curator of other people's content. But really, to win, we need to move up into a level of thought leadership, no matter what industry we're in. Thought leaders create, number one, unique content and have conversations that are specific to their target market or target markets. Does that make sense? So their content is developed specifically to solve problems or to help their target market meet their dreams or aspirations. And so that type of content, that type of customer-centric content, really, really is what makes a thought leader. Now, in addition to this, thought leaders aren't one-way publishers in most cases. They're seen as community hubs. They're two-way communicators. They're alliance builders. And even in essence, thought leaders create opportunities for communities to come together and connect. People with like interests. This event is an example of thought leadership in the offline world. It is pulling people together with similar interests, sharing best practices, and creating an opportunity for you to interact. It's not just about the CDC brand. So that's a level of thought leadership. So again, creating platforms for people to connect and communicate and collaborate, unique conversations and content that speaks to our market. This is really what thought leadership is about. And so if I was to look at an organization, my goal eventually, it's not the first step, is to really move to a point where we're in a position of thought leadership, both as individuals on the social web as well as corporations. Now, I guess a big part of that thought leadership going back to is that listening, though. And I want to talk a little bit about, later on, I'm going to move into how social CRM plays such an important role in that listening. And how, by utilizing it effectively, we can truly be more and more relevant with every customer we interact with. Not maybe the disengaged quadrant quite yet, but the rest of them. So let's talk about the rules of engagement. And I think this is important. Is Stephen Jagger and I sat down and we thought, when we wrote Sociable, the big debate was, what do we write about first? Like, at that time, rolling back now, it was only a year and a bit ago, we were debating, what the biggest platform was. And at that point, there was a lot of noise about the growth of Facebook, and it's still going. And we thought, should we just talk about Facebook first? Because people keep asking us about it. Or should we talk about Twitter? Because marketers are really into it. And what we realized is that we shouldn't talk about any tools first, is that the tools change. MySpace today is a social profile graveyard. That's what it is. It is a graveyard of social profiles. They've been abandoned. They've been left. Twitter could be that way someday soon. Facebook could morph, change, and be that way as well, depending on the demographic group. And so what we realized is that what we need to look at is the rules of engagement first, is the rules don't really change. And they really do apply, maybe slightly different in each platform. And so these aren't me standing up here and preaching to you as to what you should not do. These are really best practices I'm going to share with you based upon maybe Steve and I, what we did wrong initially. And also what we'd observed from best practice from clients. So number one, the first step when we're using social media to communicate and engage with customers is stop pitching and start connecting. This is a huge one. So this is back to me connecting with Damien on LinkedIn. And then immediately connecting, going, hey, thanks for connecting. By the way, have you seen my new free download for my ebook? And the next week, hey, Damien, I've got a new one coming out. And by the way, you've got this connection I saw. Could you introduce me? And there's this person who immediately, when they connected with a social community, begins to really make withdrawals instead of making deposits. And that's the first major mistakes individuals and brands make. Number two, doers win in the game of social media. We can't win by being lurkers. I've also had a number of companies, share with me, organizations, individuals say, look, I tried that blogging thing, it doesn't work. And I go, okay, give me the URL of your blog, let's look at it. And we'll find there's been 3 blog posts. That was it. They've done 3 blog posts. They were usually about them and their products. They got no reaction. They spent a ton of money on building a beautiful blog, and they abandoned them. And so really it takes getting involved and staying involved to win. It's like who here is part of a professional association in your region that you're part of or your organization is part of to help you grow your business from a business development perspective? Okay, most of us, right? Could even be just a local chamber of commerce, for instance, in your community. We all know that when we join those that you're not going to get your ROI in the first 3 months, that we're going to get out of a community what we put into it. And so that still really holds true online. Number 3, it's not about us. So me marketing doesn't really fly on the social web. About product announcements, here's what we're up to, here's what we're doing. This was a hard one. I often address audiences of realtors. Stephen Jagger and I do. And talking about the social web, and our first lesson is, number 1, no one cares about your listings. This is a hard one for realtors as well. Like posting to your Facebook wall, posting to Twitter, blogging about it. No one cares until they're ready to buy a house, which is about every 4 years. Okay, so between now and I bought my house, the next 4 years, if you want a relationship, you better be talking about who? Me. And my community, and how you can connect, and what can benefit me. So number 4 is be fearless in your contribution to community. And this is a really important one. Is kind of how I got involved in social media was, again, my background sales training. So we've got clients all around the world, and what I looked at was competing with the big guys toe-to-toe was difficult from a budget perspective. But what we could do is we've got great content. So I started leading on blogging and podcasting and YouTube and LinkedIn to get that content out there. And one of the things I did is I started creating more and more content, and I made this decision. I had a fair bit of criticism when I had my first hour or 2 hours of free content on the web, where I actually had peers who were really competitors say, Shane, if you give it away, then they won't want to pay for it. And I kind of was new ground, so I couldn't really look at anybody and get advice on it. And I decided I was going to go the opposite of the grain. And I said, you know what? I understand where you're coming from, but I'm going to continue to give it away, to the point where now, if you look at my blog, I've got 30 hours of free audio on sales and social media. And what was interesting is that one day I was actually laying in bed, and not in the middle of the day, but in the morning. That's what speakers do. We speak for an hour a day, we go back, lay in bed. No, that is a perception, but not the truth. Anyway, so I was in bed, it was 6:45 in the morning, and my cell phone rang. And it was a guy named Jeff Booth. And Jeff is the CEO of BuildDirect.com. So they do $200 million a year of sales of building supply materials, 95% of them in the US, and the rest sort of sprinkled throughout the world. They're actually the world's largest online wholesaler and retailer of building supply materials, solely online. And I didn't know this. My phone just rang, and I saw this number I hadn't seen. I thought it was from someone back east, because who else would call me at 6:45 on my cell phone if I live on the West Coast? But it was a local number. So I Googled it, and I saw that it was the direct line for the CEO of Build Direct. And so then I got my clothes on, because I don't like to cold call naked anymore. It's awkward, though. It is. Like, you know something they don't the first time you meet them in person. And so I got my clothes on, and I called Jeff, and I started talking to him, and he was very aggressive about the fact that I had to come down to his office, like, today and talk to him about sales training for his organization. So, I thought, this guy's kind of really aggressive, but I read his profile. Okay, so I met with him that day at 4:30. And it was only for 45 minutes, and it was like I fed him all his lines. Like, it was the easiest sales meeting I'd ever had, and I thought, okay, this is going to go south somewhere. Like, he's going to say he wants to only give me stock to do sales training, or he wants to pay me if I get results. Or I've heard all this stuff before, right? But no, he said, that sounds fantastic. You just have to meet my marketing team. And I thought, okay, here it goes. This is the hammer. And I met his marketing team for 45 minutes the next day, and it was the same thing. It was so easy. And they said, write us a proposal. And I said, okay, well, I'll write you a proposal for 2 days worth of training and consulting. And then if you like what I've done, we'll expand that into that 6-month relationship you talked about. But I understand you want to get to know me. And Jeff goes, no, I want a proposal for the 6-month program. And I'm doing the numbers in my head, and I'm going, even for a $200 million company, that's a huge commitment. So I kind of threw a number out and kind of waited. And Jeff goes, yeah. I go, okay. So I went off and immediately wrote this proposal. Who's been there? You want to write that proposal before they cool off, right? So I went and wrote that proposal right away. I emailed it through, but I thought, this is going to be hurry up and wait. The excited prospect who gets all fired up and then makes you wait, makes you wait, makes you wait. My phone rings a day later. So Monday morning he calls me, Tuesday I have the meeting, gets the proposal Wednesday. The phone rings like Wednesday afternoon, and it's Jeff's personal assistant. She says, Shane, as she said at that time it was Mr. Gibson. Now she just calls me Shane and a whole bunch of other stuff. But she said, Shane, come on down to our office. Jeff's got the deposit check for you at the front desk. We'd like to start on Friday. I was like, that's interesting. And I kind of got excited and went down. And when you go to pick up the check, I'm still kind of going, okay, this is a 6-month contract. I'm in there once a week, and I meet with the executives once a month. I'm doing the dollars. It still doesn't make sense. I'm going to pick up the check, but you don't go to someone's office and go, why do you like me? Right? That kind of would blow the whole confidence thing from the sales trainer. So instead, I got the check, and I cashed it, and it cleared. I went in and started doing training. Now, after 3 or 4 months of working with him, I got to have a good relationship with Jeff. And I'd been to his 40th birthday party at his house, and I'd gone out for beers with him and his team, and we went to a few hockey games together, and I felt more comfortable. And so I sat down with Jeff one day, and what I said to him is I just kind of, after getting to know him, I kind of grabbed a chair here and hauled him to his office, and I said, Jeff, we've been doing business together here for 3 or 4 months, and I got to ask you a question. I said, and it really was like this. I said, I was a little confused when you first hired me. It was a huge commitment. You hardly knew me. Why did you like me? Like it was just kind of that straightforward. Like, why did you hire me? I mean, you didn't seem to have enough information. And he leaned over a little closer than I was comfortable with, and he said, Shane, you have me from hello. And then I was like, whoa, okay, thanks, bud. Thank you very much. I'll be leaving, right? And then he laughed like crazy. And he said, I subscribed to your podcast through iTunes like several months before we hired you. And I've been sharing this stuff with our team. We've been reading your blog posts. We've been following you on Twitter. You're very transparent. We even know what you ate for lunch. That's cool. But, and you post other stuff and interact with people. And you even put your customer list on your website. And I was able to find some CEOs that I know through YPO and ask them what they thought of you. And, one of them gave you a really good endorsement. And I decided when you came in my office that I was going to hire you, as long as you didn't blow the first meeting. That was it. I'd already made up my mind. And that's the power of contributing really more and being fearless. It's putting that content out there. It's having dialogue, it's being open, it's opening up those channels of communication and content, and really letting your customer, this was a customer-led interaction. Traditional sales says, here's my 5 steps and my funnel. And really, social CRM is about monitoring and engaging customers or letting them consume our content the way they do, and then moving through their own process of buying. Does that make sense? And so had I maybe met Jeff a little bit before that, and he came up my radar, which I monitor everything he does now through the social web, I'm able to learn more and more about that customer, and they're able to learn more and more about us. But that situation with Jeff is happening more and more with all kinds of organizations, and that's how many people like to make their decisions today. Number 5, don't be a social spammer, engage. Now, social spam is a little different than email spam. Email spam is I pick your email address off of your LinkedIn profile, and I start pummeling you until you block me or find some way to get rid of me. Okay, it's typically to 10 people or to 1 million, but it's often off topic. Social spam is a little different because if you follow me on Twitter, the argument is I can't spam you because you agreed to listen. Okay, and if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you gave me permission to send stuff to you. And if you're my friend on Facebook, I have to watch all those updates on your wall. But the reality is that anything that's not relevant is spam, in my opinion. There's too much noise out there, and it shows a level of disrespect for the permission you've given me if we've connected and I'm pushing irrelevant content to you. So if you have 200 contacts on LinkedIn, or even 200 contacts, key clients in your CRM, are they aggregated into 20 different interest areas? And are our messages going out very relevant to each of them, or are we just pushing the same message out to everyone? And with social, the thing is, unlike email, is if I don't like what you're saying on Twitter, I unfollow you. If I don't like what you're up to on LinkedIn, or on Facebook in particular, I can limit your access to my profile information. I can disconnect you on LinkedIn. Or worse, on Facebook, this is a great one, I can mute your updates, corporate or personal, on my ongoing stream, and you'll never know. You still think you got 400 friends, but you're really talking to yourself because they've all put you on mute. You're like, hey, I'm here today, and no one's listening. Why isn't anybody commenting? Well, they've muted you, right? And so we've got to really, really honor that permission to connect. Number 6, and this goes back to the cocktail party this evening, is be authentic, because we have no choice. Everybody's worried about Big Brother, and I'm worried about you. You've all got a camera on your phone. The capacity to take a photo and publish it in an instant to Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere, instantly. And so everybody in this room has those megaphones. And so gone are the days that we can have a personal profile and a personal network and a personal behavior and then a public behavior, because it's being documented by everyone. And this is the big one where I'll have people say, but that's why I'm not on Facebook. I don't want stuff about me on the internet. I'm like, really? Do you have a 14-year-old nephew or niece with a camera on their phone? Oh, yeah. Oh, well, you're on Facebook then. You just don't know you're on Facebook. Okay, putting your head in the sand and not monitoring social conversations does not mean people aren't talking about you or your brand. And the same goes for our company. If we promote globally how fantastic we are through our marketing, our branding, our website, our conferences, our events, yet we treat our staff poorly internally, that gets out really quick. And they don't tell 10 friends anymore they're unhappy with their employer. They tell 1,000 Facebook friends and 500 LinkedIn connections and 10,000 Twitter connections. So the great thing is, if you've got an authentically fantastic brand and one grounded in good values, this is now your advantage, the marketplace. Promote it. And number 7 is be consistent. And this is something that I've done a fair bit of work with Ford Motor Company of Canada around their commercial social media use. But talking with their team out of Detroit was one of the things they've learned from just their global social media use is once you open Pandora's box, you can't close it. That if you say to your customers, I'm listening, I'm not only going to answer my phone, but I'm going to listen to you on Facebook and Twitter, and I'm going to interact. And you know what? I'm going to, when I log into my CRM and take a look at your feed on Facebook and Twitter and your blog feed before I interact with you, and I'm going to be on topic and relevant, I've got to continue to do that. So there is a commitment to truly engage once we start. So what is being sociable about? And I think I've got, by my watch, about 10 minutes to wrap up here. 10, 12, around there. So being sociable. Well, sociable is about the fact that social media isn't a video game. We wrote the book really for sales professionals and entrepreneurs in particular. But we found that also a third group that people asked about my 2 books. There was actually a guy in my audience where someone says, which book should I buy, Guerrilla Social Media Marketing or Sociable? And this guy piped up in the audience that I knew, and he said, well, if you're a marketer and using social already, use guerrilla social media marketing. But if you want a book to give to your boss, to get them to buy in on the social concept, or someone to start in a space, get sociable. And really what it's about is that social media is not a video game. It's not a friending contest. It's not you and I seeing who can get the most friends the quickest or connections or blog readers. I don't go, hey, well, I've got 10,000 Twitter followers. How many do you have? And you go, well, I've got, Doug goes, I got 100. And I go, huh. And then Doug goes, yeah, but 10 of mine wrote me checks last month. How about you, Shane? And I go, well, no. Guess what? Doug wins. Doug wins. It is about getting the results and getting sociable. Now, the best way to drive ROI, in my experience, is realizing that social media, and I think Malcolm Gladwell was very correct when he said this, social media is 1,000 people wide and 2 inches deep. And that you may get your next job off a loose connection, because studies show that you will, a casual connection you made through a friend. But in order to create a product revolution or a political revolution or create real change or build real community, you need to deepen relationships. And so the way we do that is, again, think back to segmenting and then driving relationships deep. So stealing a quote from Scott Heiferman, who founded Meetup.com. Meetup.com, by the way, is growing by, 500,000 people a month. And it's an incredible event organizing system, but a community building system. But what he says is your goal should be to use the internet to get off the internet. And that's really what it's about. It's about, I think about meeting the CEO of ING Direct out of Canada and literally just tweeting back and forth, sharing leadership tips and building a little bit of rapport there. But then again, taking the extra step, and once there was some rapport, messaging him, to my surprise, and him accepting it, and saying, hey, when I come to Toronto, would you mind if I interview you for our book, Sociable? And you'll find the interview with Peter in here, Peter Aceto. And I thought, we shot for dinner. I said, we'll buy you dinner. And I thought, well, if you ask the CEO of a bank with $30 billion of assets under management for dinner, if he's nice enough and courteous enough, he may give you coffee in his lobby, right? So I kind of shot here. But instead, he said, yeah, let's grab dinner. And we had dinner with him. We built a great relationship. We interviewed him for the book. We've done work with some of his offices across the country. And this all came from, starting, yes, at the Twitter level, or it could be the LinkedIn level or the Facebook level, but then taking the next step and getting it offline as soon as possible to deepen the relationships, or getting them on the phone, or getting them into a webinar and deepening their knowledge of you. But think of all your social media activities as trying to drive interactions that are deeper than a tweet or more personal than a generic blog post. So now where the title came from for Sociable was actually where Steve Jagger and I were scratching our heads as to what we'd call the book. We'd written the entire book. We'd finished the manuscript, but hadn't actually picked a title. And so we were at a pub across the street from my office, which is where we often celebrated each chapter being completed. Steve said, great work, cheers. And I picked up a pint of a beer called Alexander Keith's Pale Ale, and I said to him, sociable, which on the east coast of Canada is actually another term for cheers. But it also often is referred to as, let's go for a sociable, which means let's go down to the pub and connect with everybody in the community and have a beer and have a chat. And I looked at him and I said, let's call the book that. And he said, that's a great idea. Because it's the perfect, really, metaphor or meme is it is about connecting, building community, and deepening relationships. Social media is just the start. So in comes social CRM and pivotal CRM. And what this enables you to do is, like I said, social media is a messy media. There's tweets here and blog posts there and Facebook entries here, and your customer's social graph is now spread out across the entire internet. And what social CRM allows you to do, along with the data that you put into the interface and that your customer service team is and your finance team does and your marketing team does, is it is also real-time information about their latest tweets, their Facebook updates, what's going on in LinkedIn, what's going on the web. And you're able to now not just have and we realize that the minute we put data in a CRM application, no one throw anything at me, it becomes less and less relevant by the second. It becomes old. And what social does is it keeps your content constantly fresh. And this is the power of integrating social CRM, is you're not hopping off of 5 networks to see what your customer is up to before you make the call. And anybody ever hop off on the internet to do some research? and then forget what you're researching. Like you're gone for an hour. And that's called, some people what they call that project creep. I call it research creep, where it's like, wow, yeah, I do like Justin Bieber. Wait a minute. I was researching CRM. How did that happen, right? And so this is also something to keep your team focused, because it kind of puts it in a nice little piece. It's where you do business. So here's what it is. It's about smart engagement. So a CRM tool, of course, you're going to pull in information from offline events. You pick up someone's card, you have an interaction, you make a note, off the phone, off the social web, through monitoring, through other departments putting information in. But what a social CRM does, of course, is it pulls it all in. So you've got the social information, you've got email, you understand their values, their preferences, you've got good data, it helps build the relationship, you've got history with the client in there, you've got business intelligence, personal intelligence, but what we truly have is a 360-degree view of that customer. And I say the first step, and again, it is about monitoring, but then also using these tools that if you've got a sales process, like when I used to spend a lot of time building sales process, I knew it took, on the 5th call and onward, is where 81% of all conversion business happens in selling. And so one of my goals is to have a team at least be in contact with their A category clients at least once or twice a month somehow with a value-added touch. What social does is it can help you embed really high-value touches that the customer is consuming that content versus you pushing it at them. So it gives you a push and pull aspect to your frequency. So you can add value and add contact without pushing at them again. Relevancy. So let's talk about how to win.